Okay, good. So where we left off on Friday of last week was we had been sorting through performance, particularly performance in the 60s and 70s, and it's painful how many people I'm cutting out of our discussion on those, so there's plenty more to do, focusing on early performance art in 60s and 70s. But from what I hear, you've been covering that quite a bit in 4D, yeah? Especially 60s and 70s. So you talked about Chris Burden and Bruce Nauman. And, okay, good, that's good to hear. That makes me feel better about giving them short shrift. But we ended with Joseph Beuys, and where we ended with Joseph Beuys is this kind of emphasis on a couple emphases that are running through early performance art. One is that there seems to be a pretty strong sense that our bodily involvements in the world are fundamental to the way that we know things and understand things and obviously relate to people. So that we know things through our bodies, not just through our minds, right? And performance art seems to pick that up as being very important. What you do with your body is intimately connected with how you think, how you believe, how you love, those sort of things, how you relate to others. So there seems to be that kind of philosophical, epistemological bent to performance art. And the reason that's there, or the reason that I mention that as maybe somewhat distinct from other art forms, is that there has been a strong tradition in painting, photography, even sculpture, to look at things from afar, right? A kind of disinterested contemplation, as Kant would call it, where you look at something and you contemplate it, and when it's purely art, it operates in the mind, it operates in your consideration, it operates in the aesthetic appreciation of the thing, but you're not wrapped up in it. You're disinterested. Not disinterested as in disengaged, but disinterested in the sense that you don't have any stake in whether the thing survives or not. It has no bearing on you other than to think about it philosophically and to enjoy it aesthetically and so on, right? What performance art does, though, is resists that by getting you all wound up in the space. The artwork is unfolding over time, and the artwork really very much consists of our relationships, the relationship between the performer and the audience. And sometimes the audience becomes the performer in a way. And so there's no disinterested contemplation. There's no space. You're in the work, so to speak, and which positions knowledge of the work and appreciation of the work in involvement, bodily involvement, not just removed contemplation, as you can sort of close your eyes or look from afar. So I think there's that going on. And then secondly is immediately on the heels of that, there's going to be a strong emphasis on the social dynamics, the social situation of an artwork. Performance art becomes quickly and inevitably socially charged, right? It's how you and I are related in this space that's shaping our relationship. So it will very quickly take on kind of, if not social critique, at least social action, right? That if I'm not critiquing the way that we relate to each other socially, I'm at least trying to maybe reconcile the way that we relate socially, or draw attention to it. I mean, you see that with Alan Capro from last week, where I don't know that he's critiquing as much as he's just trying to be alert and aware. about how we impact each other and how we relate to each other. Okay, does that make sense and kind of summarize last week? and where we ended was with this work by Joseph Beuys, and we talked about how with Joseph Beuys, he's got this whole narrative, this whole iconography really, that is based on his experience of crashing in World War II in his bomber. I think he was a radio pilot or a radio operator in a bomber. The plane crashes, and supposedly he is rescued by these nomadic people that wrap him in fat and felt to insulate his cold, broken body and bring him back to safety and back to a place where he can heal. And those objects or those materials of fat and felt then they run throughout all of his work, and I think we're supposed to read them consistently as materials of redemption, materials of healing, materials of reconciliation, so that when he does things like makes a man's suit out of felt, what seems to be the implication? How do you read this thing? Do we read it into it a little bit? Not much, sort of? Well, we'll do it again. How do you read this thing? What does it mean to make a business suit out of felt?
That is fundamentally broken.
Good. So it seems to assert there's brokenness, that this needs, that each of us who are going through our daily lives, our professional lives, the ways that we present each other formally, we present ourselves formally in a suit or so on, that there's brokenness that needs healing. Good. And what else? Yeah.
Just that, somebody mentioned that he always wore a felt hat, and that was significant.
Yeah.
I think that making an entire felt suit is also significant,
Yeah.
especially if it's connected back to reconciliation.
Yeah.
Because then it's almost as if you are putting on reconciliation as you go about your business in the world.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. So that your actions, your professional actions, your social actions. I mean, this kind of a suit is just really a social thing. You don't wear a suit to watch TV or sleep in or something like that. It is the way we adorn our bodies to relate to each other socially, professionally. It marks our economic interactions and so on. And that there's brokenness, that each of us need healing, but there's also, by wearing this thing, you're trying to bring healing. All of your economic, social transactions should be marked by this concern for healing, restoration. Yeah? Okay. And that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. What a neutered word. That's pretty nice. Content. But it's interesting, and this is one of the things I want to point out at the beginning here that will, I think, guide us through what we're going to be talking about today, is that the work itself, well, what have we been talking about as we've been reading this work? How does the meaning of this thing reside in the thing itself? I mean, it's not really pictured. Reconciliation isn't pictured. All this stuff about healing, brokenness, and those sort of things isn't really pictured. It's more like there's an artifact here. There's an object that implies use, right? An object that has certain symbolism wrapped around it because of Beuys' own narrative and what he says about these things. But then beyond that, there's an implied use, as though the artwork is not the object, but it's the use of the thing. That he's, in one way or another, calling you to behave in the world with this in mind, to clothe yourself in felt, to clothe yourself in healing, reconciliation, concern for other people. So that the object that's presented acts as a kind of an artifact or an invitation a way of entering into a train of thought, but ultimately you're supposed to kind of move beyond the artwork and not treat the thing as really precious in itself. I mean, we treat it as precious because Joseph Beuys made it and we buy it and sell it and display it in museums. But I think for Beuys, this is more like a ladder that you climb up to get to a certain point of view, and then you kick the ladder away and you just occupy that point of view in life. Does that make some sense? The artwork has become, I guess, shaped by conceptualism. Maybe that's the shortest way of saying it. It's a conceptual approach to art making, even though conceptualism tended to be kind of cold, kind of distant, sort of that disinterested contemplation, very much marked early conceptualism. When it's put into performance art, and as it's carried through the 90s especially, the work it'll take the conceptual way of meaning in an artwork, but start to load it with more symbolic, social, more, I guess, human, for lack of a better word, content. Okay. well, if that didn't make any sense, hopefully it'll make sense as we go. But that's a way of getting us back into our discussion today, kind of putting some posts in the ground that we'll bounce around between as we go. And I want to talk about, let's see if we can get to about maybe 6 artists today, talk about them somewhat in depth. The first one is Janine Antoni, and we're gonna fast forward to the 90s, and we're gonna spend most of our time today in the 90s. And then our last lecture, 3 weeks from today or whatever, after Thanksgiving, we'll spend the whole time in the 2000s, the last decade or so. Try to get a sense of what's going on today. But so today we'll spend in the 90s. And the first one we want to talk about is Janine Antoni. This is still from a video that she did where she is tightrope walking. And what do you notice about this performance? No, it's not. It's not even a performance, because this only makes sense as a video, right? And what do you notice about the video? Yeah, it's called touch. And what touches? Yeah, her foot and the horizon line. So because of the point of view and because of her walk across this tightrope, you get superimposed her walking on the water, I suppose. I guess you could read it as her walking on the water. When she talks about it, she's more interested in the relationship of the body to the horizon line. The horizon provides the furthest reach of human vision, of the human body, so to speak. It's the horizon line on which all things appear. It's sort of the most distant, most fundamental line against which everything shows up. And she is interested in the idea of placing herself on that horizon line. And as she walks, because it's a tightrope, she's sort of all over the place, trying to keep balance. It's an interesting video if you get a chance to watch it. She says this about this work. I always thought of the horizon as a line that could not be pinpointed or in any way fixed. As you move toward it, it constantly recedes. I was drawn back to this impossible place. I wanted to walk along this line, which was essentially the line of my vision, the edge of my imagination. Okay, you get already that there's going to be with Antoni, a strong emphasis on the body in a place, the body's relationship to a place, and a pretty strong poetic impulse for her, the idea of walking on the line that infinitely recedes from you, and wanting that kind of poetic charge in the work. This is the work that she became famous for, I think, early on, 1992. It's called Gnaw. What do you see here? Chocolate? Yeah, good. So, I mean, you get these big cubes. These are 600-pound cubes, and a cube it all immediately brings to mind what art movement? Minimalism. So you have the minimalist cube, but minimalist cubes are usually made out of timeless industrial materials, steel, resin, so on. As Evan is bringing up, this doesn't seem to be made by industrial materials, and the cube, the hard-edged geometry of the cube, seems to have eroded or been gnawed away. So it seems like there are other materials being used here. You named the first one correctly. It's chocolate, a 600-pound cube of chocolate. What about the one on the right? Any guesses? Cheese, that's a good guess. Sugar?
Is it soap or lard?
Soap or lard? It's lard. So you get 600 pounds of a 600-pound minimalist cube of chocolate, 600-pound minimalist cube of lard, sort of coagulated lard. And so, what can you tell about these things? What has been done to them? Yeah, it's been the cubes, the hard-edged geometry of the cubes has been shaved down by a human mouth. They've been gnawed at. They've been gnawed down. So what you get here is not exactly a performance. I mean, what is presented are these objects, not the performance per se, but they are loaded with performance, right? They directly, somewhat like Joseph Beuys' suit, they imply an action, a human body in relation to the minimalist cube, which is interesting because if the minimalist cube is all wrapped up in that disinterested contemplation business, this one has a body sort of all over it, right? A body engages it not from afar, but directly, hands-on, mouth-on, in this kind of almost animalistic gnawing of these cubes. So it really seems to disrupt the minimalist project in a lot of ways. What do you make, and let's talk our way through this a little bit, what do you make of the choice of materials? Why chocolate and lard?
It seems like they're so like luxurious.
Ah.
To like chocolate, it's this it's decadent. It's this lovely thing, but just to see so much of it not like that makes you think it's just gross.
Okay, good. So something decadent, enjoyable, associated with luxury suddenly becomes gross just by virtue of its excess. Its excessive volume and its kind of animalistic, I don't know how else to talk about it, but animalistic gnawing at the thing, a sort of consumption that doesn't seem to be a cool, removed human consumption, but that presumes itself to be cool and removed, but one that's sort of consumptive, going after the thing, gnawing at the thing. Okay, so that explains the chocolate. What do you think about the lard? Yeah.
And lard is used in a lot of foods, a lot of fast foods, a lot of food that we think is really good but is really horrible for us. So I like, and I was just looking at what they're standing on these like little pedestals. It's like what we idolize in our society, I think.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah, good. Yeah, the pedestal is interesting, huh? I mean, it separates it out as an art object. It's been put on a pedestal. But we also talk about pedestals as idolizing, putting things up to.
Who did you have to gnaw on the lard?
Who?
Yeah, like, you said they were human bites, so who gnawed on what? I'm curious.
Who do you think? Just her. She gnawed all of it herself. So this is her own performance, our own engagement, bodily engagement with these blocks. That's a lot of lard, a lot of chocolate. Yeah.
So another thing with the lard is that lard is a main ingredient in soap, at least like handmade soap, like people used to make soap, lard and then lye and water.
Ooh.
But it's interesting just because like in one format it can be something that can like clean your body, and in another format when you ingest it that way it can like destroy your body.
Expands your body, yeah.
And I feel like that's usually how we misuse it. So it's just interesting in that context because we don't really use lard for soap anymore.
Right.
We just use it for like deep fried stuff or like Crisco is. I think that's pretty much lard.
Yeah, I mean, I think the connection between lard and soap is a legitimate one given that we've got soap coming from her. Well, in a minute, hold off. The next work we look at is going to involve soap, so that maybe gives some credence to that connection. But I do think it's right to kind of read it as, I mean, why do we add lard to things? It tends to be that it just makes stuff taste better. I mean, in a wonderful way. Fried food and lard just makes things taste good, I guess. But if you just extract it, like let's just get down to business. Let's just distill the lard and remove the rest. Strikes us as awfully gross, grossly indulgent, as does the chocolate. Now, I should let you know that even though there's this kind of implication of consumption, that she's just gnawing on this thing, consuming what is sweet to the point where we would think it would make you sick. It's just too much. And even something that we would use in all sorts of food, all sorts of cooking and whatnot, fast food, by just gnawing on it straight, consuming it in this way, it just is a gross, repulsive. I should let you know, though, that this isn't the only part of this work and the exhibition. You have the two, and this, you can see that these are different cubes. She's done this a couple times, but because especially the lard doesn't stay. It breaks over the course of the exhibition. It will gradually start to collapse, which is interesting. But there's a second room to this exhibition. So you have these two massive blocks of chocolate and lard. And in the next room, you have all of these kind of consumer products that look like what? What's up above? Sort of like a chocolate box from Valentine's Day, and then obviously lipstick. She didn't consume all that she gnawed off of those blocks because she took the lard and transformed it into lipstick, and she took the chocolate and transformed them into these little cases, empty cases, chocolate cases. Now, what do you make of the connection between those two things? How is she connecting those? Why the two rooms, and how do the two rooms relate to each other? What do you think? Yeah.
I feel like one room is kind of like an exaggeration. We're like, oh, that's disgusting, you know?
Yeah.
And then the next room is like kind of showing that we all partake in it in a way.
Oh, yeah.
In a more,
Yeah, good. So there's almost, maybe you could think of it as like a back room and a front room, like the warehouse and the storefront, so to speak. Okay, yeah, good. Where the actual kind of consumption happens and where the presentation happens. Okay. Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, gnawing is a really slow process, and so when you think about
Yeah. Okay, good. I mean, consumption seems to be a pretty big theme here. Yeah.
I was wondering if there are like some gender relationship kind of ideas going on.
Seems like it. Sort it out. The gender relationships going on here. What do you think? How would you read into that?
I kind of have some ideas. I'm not really too sure about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you certainly get it here. I mean, this seems to indicate or have pretty strong associations with women. I mean, certainly the lipstick, maybe the chocolate, lipsticks and chocolates.
It's like it maybe like it's relating back to body, I guess, again.
Yeah.
Body image.
Good.
In terms of like the way we can like specifically, I guess, women, like in terms of these images, but like consuming chocolate or like consuming lard and all these sort of things that like culture tells us, oh, that will make you look fat, or like that will make your body like look strange, and then I guess like transforming them into like this sort of consumer, like, oh, the lipstick, it just makes you look like all beautiful and make these sort of lovely like chocolate things. Like it changes, I guess, the type of consumption and like how we see it, or like how that relates to like our image of our bodies.
Good, yeah. Body image is really important here. And maybe a kind of conflicted consumption going on here. Consuming for the sake of body image and consuming in conflict with that image. This sort of conflicted self-image. Yeah. That's bought and sold. Yeah. Good? Yeah, good. Let's leave that one and see if things clarify what Antoni is up to with future works. But I think we're getting our hands around this sort of consuming body and adorned body, a sort of maybe animalistic consumption paired with a refined sort of commercial consumption, those being paired up with each other, and in the context of a gallery where you have the sort of fully present object of the minimalist cube with the display that does reference a storefront or a store, but also even a museum display these artifacts that have been separated from life and are just to look at, just to enjoy visually or something like that. Okay, good. Let's go on to one more, and we'll try to sort through her work as a whole. This is called Lick and Lather, and what do you see here? They look like busts, yeah, sculptures. If the previous work is referencing minimalist traditions, this seems to reference more kind of conventional bust portrait traditions. And she's sort of, so I guess they're classical busts in that way. And it seems like these are not made out of traditional materials like the previous sculpture, and she kind of gives it away in the title. What materials is she using? Chocolate and soap, yeah, that's right. So you have a set of chocolate sculptures, busts, and I'll just let you know at the beginning, these are self-portraits. So you have chocolate self-portrait busts on the left, soap bust self-portraits on the right, and there are 7 of them. Why 7? Do you read into that at all? Maybe it corresponds to a week. Like as you walk through these, and they do seem to, it does seem, this arrangement does seem to invite you to walk into the corridor, to break the eye contact between these two selves, so that you get in between the sort of loaded space of these selves looking at each other. But as you go through that corridor, you may read it as though you're walking through a week, so to speak. The light, dark self-portrait on Monday, light, dark self-portrait on Tuesday, and so on. And if we look at them closely, the chocolate and the soap, it seems that they haven't just been set aside for looking at as self-portraits, but what has happened to these? It appears that they have been licked and lathered, right? So it appears that Antoni has been feeding on the chocolate self-portrait and washing herself with the soap self-portrait. So on a daily basis, eating from the chocolate and bathing with the soap. And what does that do? By eating one and bathing with the other, what does it do to the self-portrait? What's that? It corrodes it, erodes it. In a strange way, kind of defaces it. That by licking this sculpture, gradually it's the face that wears away and deteriorates. It literally becomes defaced in a way. And because this is, in the bathtub and Jesus is sort of soaping up with it, the contours of the head, the contours of the shoulder, and in some cases the contours of the face wear away. How do you read into that? What does that mean? Imagine it going on, and that's the way that a lot of this work is that you get an artifact that was used and you sort of project what that thing how it would have been used. If you imagine Antoni looking at a chocolate representation of herself and licking the thing, perhaps chewing on it in some places, but mostly licking the thing. And then on the other hand, her in the bathtub looking at this image of herself and washing herself with it. What does it mean to do those things? What is happening in this sculptural performance? Yeah.
It's a really strange consumption of self.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
It is.
And I think it's also, it's different than just commenting on consumerism, where normally it's yourself that is consuming other things.
Mm-hmm.
When it's yourself that's consuming images of yourself and in some way being self-destructive.
Yeah, good. And maybe that links to the reason for consuming these things. I mean, the chocolate, I guess it's for nutrition, but more for pleasure, perhaps. And in cleaning oneself, that also has a kind of a necessity to it. I mean, you need to eat, that's a necessity, and you need to care for your hygiene. But I think probably the ways that we treat chocolate is not necessarily for nutrition, but more for pleasure, and probably the extent to which we clean ourselves is less good hygiene and more not wanting to be offensive to each other. We have social reasons for doing so. And so perhaps if both of those things are concerned with the self-pleasure and self-presentation, there's this strange dynamic in the work where caring for those things, caring for the self, erodes the image of the self in one way or another. And that's kind of a haunting, maybe difficult to get your hands around. What is it? What is that saying exactly? How do I consume myself in providing for myself. Is that a decent idea, a reasonable idea? But it's kind of haunting. There's something lurking there that's disquieting and fairly unsettling. Yeah. Was there? Yeah.
And it's strange because it's kind of an animalistic idea again. Like I'm just thinking about how cats, they lick themselves to keep them clean. I don't know, like why is something so, you would think so human about chocolate and soap has that animalistic feel?
Yeah. And I guess maybe if nothing else, it's just the consuming of the thing. And I mean, we're familiar and don't have any problem with consuming chocolate, consuming soap. I mean, fine, that's fine. But once it's an image of a person that those materials are formed into, it suddenly becomes really problematic and really disquieting that it's the human person that's somehow at stake here. It's the self-image that's somehow at stake, and that's somehow eroding in the process. Yeah. And I suppose there are a lot of different ways to read into this. Perhaps we read into it in terms of the link between our daily routines and our identity, our daily habits, our daily liturgies, if you will, and our identity, the way that we see each ourselves. Perhaps we could read it along those lines. But this is just taking that more loose, abstract idea and making it very concrete, very physical engagement with the self-image. Perhaps you read this as a kind of a meditation on Narcissus or something. I mean, there seems to be this strange narcissism in the work. I mean, that in looking at it, the images mirror themselves and are just looking at each other, but they've been used, consumed. There seems to be this just narcissism that the work is about. So perhaps we read it as narcissistic and consider, I don't know to what extent each of us suffer from narcissism in its own way, concern with self-image. And it's not that being concerned with self-image is equated to narcissism. We shouldn't make that connection too loosely, but we can consider how it does relate. And perhaps the role of pleasure, it highlights the role that pleasure and cleanliness plays in our society, in the way that we see each other, the way we see images of each other, of other people, of ourselves. Is pleasure and cleanliness a sort of preoccupation, a necessary preoccupation for us? Yeah.
Were they all originally the same cast? Like when you look at them,
Yeah.
some of them have been eroded more.
Yeah, so I'll show you a few more. I've been lagging here, I guess. But same cast, chocolate, soap, and obviously used to varying extents and used in various ways. Some of the faces clearer than others. The licking of the face is just a wild image, isn't it? Yeah, so same cast used over and over again. Okay, good. Anything else anyone wants to say about this? Lick and lather. All right. It's the body. It's the self-image. Maybe it is putting a more prominent emphasis on the role of our practices, our bodily practices and routines in our, negotiation of identity, a formation of identity. Yeah.
I love that there's also just this attachment and weariness to it, because there are 7 sets. So you're constantly you're taking care of yourself in this way every day for 7 days a week.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it gives you a segment of time, but implies that it extends out further. Yeah, good. Good. I don't want to spend time on this work, but just to point you in this direction, it does seem like self-image, especially for a woman, is important to her work. This is called Butterfly Kisses, and it's an abstract painting that's done entirely with her eyelashes, with thick CoverGirl mascara, thick lash mascara that is used as a brush, brushing on the paint. So it's the paint applied to the face, I guess, and then the face applying the paint to the canvas. She does a similar thing with another work called Loving Care or Tender Care, something like that, where she does this. She mops the floor of a gallery with her hair and paint. So it's abstract painting on the floor, but with her body, with her hair. One more work from Antoni, and then we'll go on. What is this work called? Is it tear or tear? I think it's supposed to be both. What we have here is a wrecking ball, and but it's a wrecking ball that looks in pretty sad shape. Because it's made out of the wrong kind of material. She cast a wrecking ball in lead, solid lead. Lead is a soft material, a soft metal, much softer than the metal normally used for a wrecking ball. I don't know, what is it? Iron, steel, something. So she casts it in lead and then tears down a building with it. Demolishes a building with this wrecking ball. What you get in the installation is the wrecking ball exhibited. You get the sound of the demolition going on. So kind of you hear noises, and then every once in a while where the wrecking ball is hitting the building. And then projected opposite of the wrecking ball, filling the entire wall, is a picture of an eye, her eye, I believe, that blinks with the impact of the wrecking ball on the building. Poof, poof, right? So what's going on? How do you read this? I mean, I guess, why would she want the wrecking ball? Why not just use a wrecking ball? Why cast one in lead? What does that do when you're just knocking down a building with a vulnerable wrecking ball? A ball that gets not as wrecked as the building, obviously, but it suffers its own wounds in doing the wrecking. I mean, it seems like she wants a wounded instrument here, a wounded tool. Yeah?
Well, it mirrors our own bodies more so, because our bodies are vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
There are people who are destroying these buildings using these tools.
Yeah.
So it mirrors like the intent of the people who are doing it.
Yeah.
Just kind of like taking that removal away of like, oh, we're destroying this building, but it's not impacting us. Like we're not destroying.
Yeah.
It's being destroyed by our agency, and by putting this wounded wrecking ball in, it's like.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. An object of destruction that suffers its own wounds in the course of destruction, and that reads, as you said, as a body, a scarred body, perhaps it especially reads as a body when you pair it up with an eye. I think this massive eye, that you kind of get a mirroring of the circles or the spheres or whatever. So it reads as a body, I think, in relation to that, but perhaps we read it even metaphorically as a body attacking something or destroying something, tearing down something, whether it's whether you interpret the building as a home, or I mean that would read in one way, or as an institution, as an apartment complex or something like that. That in tearing those things down, we do so as vulnerable beings ourselves. Yeah, that's good. What do you make of the eye? Why the eye? Why the eye blinking with the sound of the impact? I mean, I guess it's a viewer, someone looking at the destruction, perhaps. Yeah.
It's like the self being impacted by the tearing down. Tearing down of maybe another person.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, that like we could do physically, or not physically, but well, yeah, physically or verbally.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
If we take the title as like here, it seems like the wrecking ball, like when the eye blinks, the wrecking ball is like coming out of the person, and so it's like a symbol of the wound, the internal wound.
Mm-hmm.
But it also wounds others as coming out of the self.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, there's some ambiguity into how the wrecking ball and the eye relate. Are they both one body or two bodies, opposite bodies? Is it someone watching from afar and blinking out of avoidance? Like, I don't want to see that. It's sort of the all-seeing eye that doesn't want to see that, doesn't want to see that. Or is it the eye blinking kind of out of impact? Like it's impacting me in a way, or can we talk about an aggressor and a victim here, or are they the same? Are they opposite? Is one an innocent sort of bystander, disinterested viewer? There's a lot of ways you could go here, but it's pretty loaded. Either way you go, any of those ways you go. And I think it's worth just pointing out that once again, as in all of these works, there seems to be a lot missing. They strongly, strongly refer to events that happened, actions that happened, performances that happened. But what gets exhibited is not the performance, but the objects that are left over, the objects that had been used for bathing or eating or knocking down a building. And so the way that the art carries the meaning is strongly dependent on performance art, right? That we understand performance art. The work, we could say, is performative in a way, but it seems important for Antoni that what gets exhibited are these pieces that we have to reconstruct, that become kind of poetically entangled with each other. And we read it in those terms. And once again, just to say that if conceptualism felt like a journey through an aesthetic desert, you kind of have to go through it to get to this place. This is all what we might say is post-conceptual or neo-conceptual. It's coming out of conceptual work, but it's becoming much more interested in human themes of wounding and damage or identity. There seems to be a lot at stake in these works, the self and the other, which I don't know that 1970s conceptualism would have had a whole lot of time for, or 1960s conceptualism, but this takes those working strategies and re-employs them. I suppose, well, I'll read you a short quote from her because it's nice about this work. I tried to tell the history of a wrecking ball through its surface. I did this by casting the wrecking ball in lead, a soft metal, and then using it to demolish a building. Unlike an industrial wrecking ball, the lead ball was vulnerable. Each strike left it permanently scarred. The sound of the ball crashing against the building was synchronized with the blinking of my eyelid. So it is the artist's eye. The installation includes the video projection of my eye and the actual lead ball used in the demolition, but excludes what has been seen and hit. I intentionally create a gap at the center of the work. The viewer is left to consider whether the closing of the eye is an instinctive reaction against danger or the willful avoidance of something one doesn't want to see. And yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. Let's look at a few other artists. We're going to treat Ann Hamilton more in the afternoon. There's much to talk about with Ann Hamilton, but I want to just point you to this work for now. This is also around the same time that Antoni did her Gnaw work. This is called Malediction. Anyone know what that word means? Maybe we can break it down. What is diction? Speech, yeah, words. What's male? Bad. Bad speech. Poisonous speech. A curse is a malediction, for instance. And this performance work consisted once again of 2 rooms. The first room you'll hardly ever get photos of, but if you happen to see it somewhere, it is full of sheets that have been soaked in red wine and water and wrung out and then distributed across the floor. So it's kind of a big, what looks like a big wet, bloody mess. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It sat there for maybe a month or so, and so became kind of musty in there, and they just they sat in there. And you walk into this second room, and the far wall is full of clean sheets, stacked up on the wall above head height. And then there's sound, a woman's voice, kind of echoing through the gallery, and it is Ann Hamilton's voice reading poetry from Walt Whitman, particularly one called The Body Electric. And so she's reading this sort of slowly, and if you ever hear Ann Hamilton say anything, it's like velvet. She's got this wonderful, satin is a better word. She's just got this wonderful voice. And so you walk in there, and sitting at a very long table, a refectory table. I mean, that kind of a table only, or is primarily associated with a dining hall, an older dining hall. So sitting at this refectory table is a woman with her back to us, and she is working on something. She's stationary, but she is performing a repetitious task. And that repetitious task includes taking from this massive bowl in the back corner. By the way, you can see the sheets, the wet wine stained sheets. She's taking from this massive bowl of bread dough, so uncooked bread dough that she's removing, rolling into kind of little balls using some flour here. So she's kind of working as though she's a baker. But instead of putting them on tins or cookie sheets or something like that, she's taking them and pressing the bread dough into the roof of her mouth. So taking an impression, pressing it up into the roof of her mouth, and then removing it and placing it in this basket. And that's a big basket, right? That basket has a lot of room in it. And if you look at the basket, any associations with it? Kind of coffin-esque, yeah? Did someone say something else? It seems related to the body, the proportions of the body. And that's right, it is from the turn of the century, at the beginning of the 20th century, bodies were often transported to the morgue in baskets like this. So it's kind of a casket basket. I'm sorry, that's, I was trying to rein it in as it was coming out, and it just came out. So it's a body, related to the body, particularly a dead body. Now, what do you make of this? We've got a couple of working parts here that I think we can read into. We've got two appearances of the bed sheets, right? One that is dirty, maybe associated with blood, or at least wine. I mean, wine can go a couple ways. We have associations between wine and blood. Perhaps that's there. We've got two appearances of the bed sheets. One, wine and water soaked, one set that is clean and facing her. So she's facing these things while working. It's only on that wall, this stack of clean sheets. Unfolded, so perhaps they're sheets that need to be folded or something, but they're unfolded up against the wall. So we've got two appearances of the sheets in different states. We've got two appearances of this bread dough in different states. One as kind of the potential for baking, turning into bread, and then one taking the form of the mouth and then taking the form of a dead body in a way, being associated with the body. And navigating all of this, or in between all of this, performing this function is this baker, almost kind of industrial baker, commercial baker, right? A repetitious task over and over and over again. That seems to be a baking bread, preparing something. What do you say about those moving parts? How do we weave those together? Yeah.
I keep reading it as something sacred. Thinking about wine and bread, my mind just automatically goes to the sacrament.
Right.
And then I keep thinking about life and death, I guess. Sheets being like a place of life, a place like where you sleep, you go to be restored, like a sacred place for like a married couple, like a place of life, and then a place of death for the casket. So yeah, I don't know, there's something so sacred about it. I can't figure out what it's all doing.
Yeah, good. So you're seeing sacraments, Eucharist, bread and wine. I mean, that seems to be pretty strong, pretty obviously there. And I love how you've handled the bed sheets, associating them both with life and death, birth and death. I mean, bed sheets are generally where we're born and where we die, and then where we rest in between. So it seems perhaps to speak of the course of a life, which perhaps causes you to wonder about if one is beginning and one is end, if the clean sheets are pointing towards the future or if they are a past. Which order do you go in? Yeah, good. I mean, I guess it's do the dirty sheets get cleaned, or do the clean sheets get dirtied? Maybe that's a way of asking the question. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Oh, I pointed at two people at the same time. We'll start up here.
It's just like the bread is like obviously associated with life. Normally taking something like bread of life, like in that same religious language, and putting it into a casket.
Yeah.
In pieces, not the whole thing, just in small
Right.
pieces.
And what kind of pieces? Mouth-shaped pieces.
I'm wondering if because I feel like the action of the sort of the expression of the mouth, there's multiple ways you could read that, and I'm just wondering one way you could read it is like just the repetitive action of it. I almost read it like, is it some sort of like act of like atoning for something. That you take it and like, especially with the name like Malediction, like that you take like the sort of like impressions of the mouth and you put them to death. You lay them aside, like pieces, like in a coffin.
Yeah.
Like continually, like you take them and then you lay them aside.
Yeah.
And lay them aside and lay them aside until like you filled this whole sort of like life or like coffin with all of these like impressions of the mouth. I don't know if it's like words or like bad speeches or things like that.
Yeah.
Constantly putting them like in this coffin size.
Yeah, good. That, I think you've located a really important pivot for the work, like a high center and or what? What's the right metaphor? A high center or a fork in the road. We'll do that. A fork in the road on this point of is this what I think is speech? I mean, the impressions of the mouth is kind of bred as speech. Are you putting to death the curses? Is it redemptive? Or is this a sort of the bread that I eat, the nourishment that I take, keeps resulting in curses that drag me to death in a way?
I was gonna say the other way, like it's also like because it is this basket, like it is almost like you're saving it, like
Yeah.
putting it aside
Yeah.
to like be
Yeah.
given.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you saving it to like, are you saving it in some way, like?
Yeah.
Or is it like death in some way?
Yeah. Are you becoming it? Are those days? Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
I think it also has this message of like potential. So this could potentially been cooked and been good. But
Yeah.
throwing it away, and it's just constant waste.
Yeah.
Uncooked.
Yeah, good. The uncooked bread seems to be speak pretty strongly of potential. Like it's not actualized. It's not cooked. It's potential bread, and it could potentially feed and nourish, but it gets stuck in the mouth and never gets ingested. Gets stuck and comes out as curse or as some sort of speech. Yeah, Amy.
There's some sort of parallel between wine, just because I think it has some sort of embalming properties or preservation properties.
Oh, yeah.
To keep like your body from temporarily at least
Yeah.
decaying. So that's just an interesting thing that both bread and wine, like wine, even when you're dead, can preserve your body in some way.
Yeah.
And when you're alive, it can preserve your body in a different way. Yeah, so that's just that weird juxtaposition of like, there's no body in there, but you've got remnants of a body or remnants of things that could have been with bodies. And then here you have a body and you have something to sustain live bodies, but it's being put aside, and it's just a...
Yeah, good. Good. I mean, I think we've got a lot of really wonderful things out on the table here. And again, I'm sorry, no pun intended. But out on the table that we're interpreting, we're working with, we're writing. And I don't know that we have to pin it down. I mean, I would encourage you, if you're interested in this work, maybe write a paper on it. And by the way, paper proposals, if you haven't gotten them to me, get them to me now. And also, by the way, if you become enamored with another work and you change, fine. Just send me another proposal. At any rate, I don't know that we have to nail it down much further for our purposes here in class, other than to say that it seems to be a pretty strong encounter with human mortality, right? From dust you were created, to dust you will return. The bread that you ingest for today will keep you going for today, but Our lives are pointing towards death. We are beings unto death, as Heidegger would say. I don't know if I want to reference Heidegger here. But that death is a problem. There is curse. If we're not cursing, we have been cursed. We suffer from the curse, the human curse. And this work seems to set up that curse as a kind of starting point, the curse of death, the body that moves towards death, and then perhaps set up at least a longing in the face of it, a longing for cleanliness, being cleaned, being fed, a longing for the Eucharist, for someone who passes through death and leads us in an exodus out of it, out the other side. It's unclear how important Christianity is to Anne Hamilton, whether this is overtly that. It's hard to make that argument, but we'll see this afternoon that she brings it back. She's pretty well steeped in Christian theology, and she keeps bringing it back. It seems to be an important element of her work. Was there another hand? Anyone want to say one more thing about this? Yeah.
I don't know if this undermines the work or not, but it's kind of like you're trying to make an imprint of your own skeleton in a way. But like, I mean, that's one part that we can't see
Sure.
defined in a skeleton.
That's interesting.
Head, so I don't know.
Yeah. The mouth, not just associating with speech or eating, but associated with the skeleton, the inside of the skeleton. Yeah. Okay. Good. And if you're interested, I don't want to take the time to do it, to read a portion of Walt Whitman's Sing the Body Electric. That is the name of the poem, but if you're interested in that, go read that. It's very well worthwhile. The love of the body, just one sentence. The love of the body of man or woman balks account. The body itself balks account. I think that's we are in this kind of performance emphasis on the bodily self, bodily knowledge, bodily presence in the world, as being where we live, where we know others, how we know the world. That in itself is passing away, balks account. You can't account for that fully. You can't account for the problem of suffering, of death. Something else has to account for it. I think that's quite interesting. Okay, let's. We got a little more than 10 minutes. Let's. I want to do one more artist. I have no idea what I'm gonna cut here, but let's do one more artist before we take our lunch break. This is a guy named Francis Alÿs. That's how you spell that how you pronounce that last name, Francis Alÿs. And Alÿs is going to take up this project of performance, performative meaning, with some similar themes as both Antoni and Hamilton, but put some different spins on it, some different emphasis. This is called the paradox of praxis. What does praxis mean? Anyone know? Practice, yeah, basically. Practice, activity, repetition, practice, yeah. The paradox of praxis, and in parentheses, sometimes making something leads to nothing. And this consists of a video of him pushing a block of ice, a massive block of ice, through the streets of Mexico City until it entirely melts. And it takes him 9 hours of doing this. So basically, it eventually melts down all the way at sunset. So he pushes this massive thing, and really has to work at it. I mean, you know, pushing a block of ice this heavy across a dry, warm sidewalk or street is not an easy task. And what sense do we make of this? Why in the streets of the city is this done? That seems to be really important for Alÿs, that he always locates himself in the city. He's walking through the city. Many of his works are walks through city streets, traversing the spaces in an extremely unusual way. He generally does these activities that seem to have some sort of purpose, but they're extremely odd, that he sticks out. Among all the people doing things and going places and carrying things, transporting things through the city streets, city walkways, he stands out as doing so seemingly without reason or very strangely. And I suppose that draws attention in one way or another to some of the other paradox of praxes that are going on the city streets, making things that lead to nothing. Perhaps it's a comment on art making. Kant said, in addition to the fact that art is most itself when it is disinterested contemplation, he related to that, he said that the highest art is having a sense of purposiveness without purpose, right? So art that's functional is low for Kant. Art that is high has no purpose other than disinterested contemplation. It has it's purposive, but it has no functional purpose. Perhaps Alÿs is kind of toying with that idea, Kantian art making. And I think in watching this video, by the way, Alÿs has a great website where he just posts a lot of these videos. So you can watch these, most of them, including this one. It obviously doesn't include the full 9 hours, but you kind of have to feel the power of the title by considering what it would be like to push a block for more than 9 hours, with your goal being that it dissolves and there's nothing left, and you're just standing in the street alone without the thing you've been working on all day. With Warhol, we talked about vanitas, contemporary vanitas. Is this a vanitas statement? Things passing away. Is it an allegory for art? Is it an allegory for human life? How do you read into it? It seems interesting that whichever way you read that, he locates it specifically in public space. Social space is the space that he carries this out in. And it is public space or social space that is his preoccupation all the way through his work. And he generally finds ways, most of his work is organized around finding ways to highlight certain cultural systems, social systems that are normally invisible and that just we don't notice. So for instance, he does a work like this. It's fairly underwhelming to see it in person, but it consists of a bronze. He took, seven? I think it's 7 or 9 bronze sculptures of a snail. And that is probably an intentional choice, the snail. And he paints them different colors so he knows which is which, and he drops them into trash cans throughout Mexico City. And then he spends the next several months, 7, he did 7 of these. He spends the next several months sort of scouring flea markets and garage sales and sort of secondhand shops, seeing if any of these things will turn up. And he, up to this point, or as of 1994, had found 2 of them, which means what? How do they get from a trash can to a market? Someone is picking the trash. sort of foraging for anything of worth, right? And so by putting it into one end of the culture, if you will, and looking for it to come out the other end, although it's opposite. I mean, usually it's things that are purchased in the market that find their way into the trash. He's reversing the flow or the direction, putting it into the trash to wait for it to come back out through the market. And in doing so, in it succeeding, at least partially, he highlights this something, some invisible part of our economy, or at least Mexican economy, we'll say North American economy, highlighting invisible segments of North American economy that are bringing things from the trash to the market. Does that make sense? And he's awfully clever at finding ways to highlight these systems that we're normally oblivious to. These sort of cultural structures that we're normally oblivious to. Oh, is this what we should talk about? There's too much to talk about. And I'm a obsessive over-planner. We'll talk about this one, might as well. This one is called Fabiola. And if you see this installed, it's been installed in several different places. This is when it was installed in LACMA at the LA County Museum. It says 2008 to the present, but that's not really true. It's still going on. He's still accumulating these things, but it starts in the early 90s, I believe, mid-90s. And what it is are all of these paintings. You walk into this room and you see 350, a little more than 350 paintings. Depending on where you see it, it grows because he keeps collecting these things. But you see 350 paintings that all look to be the same initially. They're all this woman wearing a red veil facing to our left and hung in this salon style. So all very close. They become this kind of crowd of women, this woman in red veil, each one, because they're profiles, each one just pointing you towards the next, right? It's this crowd. And initially you wonder, that's a lot of paintings for one guy to do. How, what, why? And why are they all coming out so different? The more that initial impression of them all being the same is soon displaced by a sense that they're all pretty different. And one sort of quickly realizes or reads or whatever that these are not painted by Alÿs. Not any of them. They're collected by Alÿs. And what he does is goes once again from scouring flea markets and secondhand shops and auctions and garage sales and everything like that throughout North America and Europe. He collects these things. And buys one wherever he can get one. He's accumulating these paintings. David Morgan, I think, puts it pretty well when he talks about the impact of this work, seeing this work. He says this: examining them, one is struck by the visual fact that there is no original. There's no single image that emerges as authoritative, as the genesis and model of all the rest, the grandparent from which the rest have descended. Yet one senses that there is a referent, albeit elusive, never fully present in any single image, but there nonetheless. Variations only make the recognition stronger. We see the same face through the veil of each image's particularity. What he's getting at there is that there's this big group. How are they related? Why are there people painting what seems to be the same painting in many different areas in Europe and in many different areas in North America? Which is the source? It seems like they're all painted from a source. What is the source? Well, the source is a painting from the late 19th century, late 1800s, I think 1882 or something like that, by a French academic painter named Henner. Jean-Jacques Henner, I think is his name, or Henner, it probably would be pronounced in French. And that painting is lost. No one knows where it is, no one knows what happens to it. It was shown in the French Salon in 80, maybe that was in 82. It was shown in the Salon, it was auctioned 4 years later and hasn't been seen since. But for one reason or another, in those 4 years that it was around, it started generating copies of it. It became a very popular painting to make and has generated copies of copies, and it's this strange kind of production of copies that refer to an original that is no longer present. But that's really present. I mean, it's really present in the images. They all seem to be coming from this same source, but all different. Some of the painters seem quite skilled, and if you were to take one of these paintings individually, you'd say, well, that's a nice painting of Fabiola. By the way, Fabiola is a 4th century Roman saint. She was a woman who was part of an aristocratic family, became a Christian, and was married to this already married to this fairly abusive man who she eventually divorced, and the church didn't approve of that, so there was this tension in her life for years and years. She eventually kind of reconciles herself to the church, repents, and becomes this really generous patron of the church. She founds probably the first hospital in Rome, maybe the first hospital in the Western world is founded by her. Saint Jerome eulogizes her when she passes away. At any rate, she is this historical figure, Fabiola, from 4th century Rome, who is painted by a 19th century Frenchman. So he's sort of imaginatively reconstructing her, and then you have all of these other paintings that are remembering her by painting Henner's painting, repainting it, copying it, but Henner's painting is long lost. So there seems to be this kind of effort to preserve a history, preserve a story, preserve something that happened, someone who was present, who acted in the world, but it always going through various cultural systems. So you see an individual painting and you're like, well, this is Fabiola, Saint Fabiola. But then you see it in relation to others, and where is Fabiola? Which one is more authoritative about what Henner's painting looks like? And as they kind of gather, some of the artists are clearly professional and well-trained, others not so much, some coming from different countries and having different kind of aesthetic priorities, perhaps, paintings made for different uses. And so you have highlighted some of them in needlework, some of them in beans and rice, but you have highlighted in Alÿs collecting these and representing them, you have, what gets highlighted, I think, are the cultural systems that hold histories, right? This is how histories get held. This is how histories get told from one person to the next, where we kind of, I think in a lot of ways, faithfully refer to an original, refer to the event that happened, but it always comes through. We refer through our points of reference, through our skills at speech or at painting, through our reasons for telling the story in the first place. I emphasize certain things about Fabiola this time around. There are a dozen other things I could say about Fabiola, and they depended on probably my reasons for relating the story. And Alÿs is going to do that fairly consistently throughout his work, try to highlight the ways that cultures hold their stories and the way that they practice life together, for better or worse. And interestingly, when he showed it at LACMA and wherever he shows it, he makes sure that it is exhibited not in the contemporary section, but in proximity to if possible, to the 19th century kind of collection, or at least earlier, more historical. The parts of the museum no one visits anymore because they're old paintings, old master paintings, to emphasize the kind of historicity of the thing, the way that this is doing history in relation to the way that these are doing history. Okay, anyone want to say anything about Fabiola, Saint Fabiola? Yeah.
I have a question. I wonder, I know that she's still wondering, but I wonder if anyone has, like, in light of his exhibit, then started to paint these sorts of things.
It's possible.
Because that would be interesting, and
Yeah.
you know, stick them in garage sales and see if they showed up in his show.
In his show.
That would be-
Yeah, sure.
But it would also be like it would still participate in a way in the same cultural exchange.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know exactly what his rules are for that. I know he continues to collect these, and I think his only rule is that it has to be a handmade original. It can't be a reproduction. I mean, like a mechanical reproduction. He's excluded all photographs and postcards and all that stuff, which there are, but it has to be hand painted. So even these little trinkets and whatnot, they have to be hand painted trinkets. So I suppose as long as it fills the bill of being hand painted, I don't know that he would exclude them. Yeah. Okay, good. We should do lunch, and maybe I'll show you one more work from Alÿs after lunch, because he's pretty great.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.